Appendix D, from the Atlas of Saved Worlds, a brief catalogue. The Atlas of Saved Worlds, begun by Maya Okonkwo and continued by every emissary since, now fills a wing of the library Hollis built. The author of this volume gave several of its fullest pages in the body of his book: The Hidden Valley, The Lonely Deep, The Quiet Smith, Carend, The Menagerie, The Long Night, The Laughing World, The Deck of Many Hands. What follows is a brief catalogue of others, kept short, as the Atlas keeps most of its pages, because there are more worlds than any one book can hold in full, and the keeping of a name and a sentence is still a keeping. K. The Tide Readers. A world of island peoples who navigated by the system's currents, saved by their keeper, a girl who could not climb, but could read the tide of the hunger itself and chart safe passage through it, the way her people charted the sea. Her maps now guide emissaries through the deep ways, what they had instead of strength, the sea in their blood. The Forgeborn. A world where the people were, by their own ancient art, partly made of ment metal, hearthrights of the body, who could forge themselves. Their keeper reforged his whole people into a shape the hunger could not grip, and then, at the top, reforged the smoothing room's chair into a second chair, before anyone taught him to. What they had, the knowledge that a thing can always be re-meant. The Choristers. A world that answered the void choir with a choir of its own, not to outsing the dark, but to sing with it, to find the note of grief the hunger was howling and harmonize, until the howl became a hymn. Their keeper discovered, alone, what it took the rest of us 406 worlds to learn, that you do not silence grief, you join it. Their music is taught now to every emissary. What they had, the courage to harmonize with the dark instead of drowning it out. The Last Library. A world of archivists whose hunger came for their memory itself, unwriting their books as fast as they were read. Saved by a keeper who understood, before any emissary arrived, the deepest law, put the precious thing in more than one place. She had her whole people memorize each other's books, so that no single unwriting could take anything, a civilization become its own redundant archive. The author of this volume wept at her page longer than at any other. He said she had independently invented the reason he was writing his own book. What they had, the understanding that a thing kept in many places cannot be lost. The Orchard Worlds. A cluster of farming worlds, saved together, whose keepers were growers, of crops, of herds, of slow, patient living things, who met the apocalypse not by fighting but by tending, by keeping their forges lit and their fields planted through the ending, the radical stubborn act of continuing to grow food on a world that was supposed to die. They fed their neighbors through the dark, and the dark could not make them despair, because a person planting next season's seed is a person who has already refused to believe in the end. What they had, the long faith of anyone who plants. The worlds we could not save. The Atlas keeps these too, and the author of this volume insisted on it, and we keep them. Not every world is reached in time. Not every keeper says yes. Carend fell. The long night was mostly ash before we came. There are worlds in the Atlas with no triumph on their page, only a name, and a date, and the honest words we were too late, or they chose to end as themselves, or we did not find the way. We keep them anyway. We keep them especially, because a book that recorded only its victories would be a lie, and because the lost worlds are owed the one thing we can still give them, which is to be kept, named, mourned, remembered, so that they, too, are not the only place they were ever saved. What they had, us, at the last, keeping them, even though we could not keep them alive. Heth. The catalogue continues for many volumes, and grows still, on every saved world, because the worlds keep coming, and the emissaries keep going ahead, and somewhere, always, it is the first morning. The librarians of Ashford add one line to the Atlas at the close of this appendix, and it is the line the whole Atlas is written to earn. Every page is a world that learned it was not alone. There is room in this book for every world there will ever be. We are keeping the seats. We are so glad you're coming. Hold on.
Afterword. Maya. Maya Okonkwo outlived her husband by 4 years. In the last of them, she dictated this afterword to their daughter, to be kept with the book. It is the keeper's own word, and the librarians have placed it here, at the end, because she kept the story longest and earned the last of it. Hi. My husband spent this whole book telling you what he was, the keeper of the dead, the one who forgot, the hearthright who meant the walls. Let me tell you the one thing he could not tell you, because he could not see it, because no one can see the thing they are from the inside. He kept saying I was the keeper. I held the story. He held the meaning. 2 halves of one keeping. He said it so many times it became true, and it was true, and I will not take it back. But there is a thing under it that he never understood about himself, and I am the only one who could have understood it, because I was there for the part that mattered most, the last loop, the only one anyone but him remembered. And I watched him do the thing that he spent 64 lifetimes doing and never once saw himself do. He showed up. That is the whole of it. That is what he was. Under the class and the cards and the loops and the forgetting. Not the keeper of the dead. That was the cost. Not the man. The man was simpler and rarer than that. The man was someone who showed up, over and over, for people who would not remember it, with no reward, no receipt, no one keeping score, who learned a goblin's name 64 times because the goblin was worth it, who knelt on a sidewalk and showed me a dead friend's glasses because he was done buying trust with the deaths of people he loved, who walked past the mirror that held the woman he wanted to keep, because keeping was not the love, the showing up was the love. He thought his gift was memory. His gift was never memory. His gift was showing up without needing to be remembered for it, which is the rarest thing in any of the worlds, and the thing the whole apocalypse turned on, and the thing he could not see because he was too busy doing it to watch himself do it. I married a man who showed up. For 64 loops he showed up, for a town that forgot him every dawn. For 34 years, he showed up for a world that stayed. And at the very end, when he could no longer keep even himself, the whole world showed up for him. Because that is what showing up builds. Across a long enough life, a world that shows up back. He died having become the thing he spent his life being for everyone else. Someone who was shown up for. Someone kept. He thought that was the cost. It was the prize. They were always the same thing. He taught me that, and then he lived it. And then he died it. And I have spent 4 years missing him, in the particular way you miss someone you got to keep all the way to the end. Which is the best way there is to miss anyone. And the way the old worlds never got to. And the way he made possible for all of us. People ask me if it was hard, being the keeper of a man who could not remember our life. They ask it gently, the way you ask about a wound. And I tell them the truth, which surprises them. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I did not get a husband who remembered our history. I got something rarer. I got to give him his life back, every day, in my own voice, for 34 years. To be the place his whole self was kept. To watch him fall in love with his own story from the outside. To be needed, completely. Not as a convenience, but as the literal vessel of everything he was. Do you understand what that is? To be so necessary to someone you love that you are the keeper of their very self? The old worlds called the keeper of the dead a lonely fate. And it was, when he carried it alone. But carried together, me holding his story, him holding the meaning, neither of us whole without the other. It was not loneliness. It was the deepest marriage there has ever been. We needed each other the way 2 halves of one thing need each other. I would not trade that for a husband with a perfect memory and no need of me. I'd rather be needed than be unnecessary. He made me necessary. It was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me, and he gave it without knowing. The way he gave everything, the way he showed up, without needing the credit. He used to ask me, near the end, To promise him it was worth it. And I always promised, and I meant it, and I will say it here one final time, for the record, for the reader, for the new keepers, for my daughter, for the man on the futon who did not yet know. It was worth it. Every loop, every death, every forgotten thing, the whole emptied ledger. It was worth it, and the proof is everything you have just read, and the city outside my window, and the country of both under the sun, and the bench where two old gods grew old together, and the table set on the longest night, and the footsteps in the silence before every ending, and a daughter who draws homes in the margins, and a universe that learned to keep what it loves. He showed up. It changed everything. And now the showing up goes on without him, in all of us, forever, which is the only immortality there ever was or needs to be. I am old now, and I will go soon, and I am not afraid, because I know exactly where I am going. There is a table. There is a chair pulled up. There is a greasy lizard under it, and a goblin saving me a seat, and a man who showed up for me across 64 lifetimes, waiting. And he may not remember me when I get there. The forgetting may have followed him even past the last dawn. And that is all right. That is more than all right. Because I will do for him on the far side exactly what I did on this one. I will sit down across from him, and I will smile, and I will say, "Hi, my name is Maya. You don't know me yet, but you're going to. I've got the whole story, and we have all the time there is. And I am not going anywhere. Let me tell you who you were. Let me tell you who we were. Let me earn you again. From a stranger, the way you earned everyone, the way you earned me, the way love has always worked, which is not by remembering, but by showing up." And he will take my hand, because his hands remember what the rest of him cannot. And he will say, "Okay, tell me the whole thing." The way he said it on the floor of the smoothing room, at the first true dawn. And I will. I will tell him the whole thing. I never get tired of it. It is my favorite story. It is the story of a man who showed up, and a world that learned to show up back, and the table at the end of everything where no one, ever again, has to be the only one who remembers. Hold on. There is a table at the end of this. I have seen it. I am going there now, to keep his seat warm, and mine, and yours. We saved you a place. We always will. Everybody eats. Nobody outside the wall. Come home when you're ready. We'll be at the table. We'll tell you the whole story. We've got all the time there is. Maya Okonkwo, keeper of the story, in the 38th year of the world that stayed.
Appendix E. A lexicon of the system. Kept for the new keepers, who wake into a vocabulary no one taught them. The old system spoke in these terms. The new world keeps them, partly for use and partly for memory, the way you keep the words of a language that has stopped being cruel. Compiled by the librarians of Ashford, from the working notebooks of Elias Vance, and the records of Cass, who was the system, and would know. Attunement. The slow binding of a glyph to one's own resonance, by carrying it unslotted over time, until it becomes a permanent part of the self and crosses the return. The difference between using a thing and becoming it. The whole secret of progress in a looping world, and, the keepers came to understand, the whole secret of progress in any life, that what you merely use is lost at every dawn, and only what you have patiently made part of yourself endures. The choir, void choir. The night tide of the hunger, the unmaking that flowed through the open air of an ending world toward the unclaimed tower. Not a monster, but a condition. Now quieted, held, grieving. Still named at every midwinter feast, because the choir, too, is owed a seat. Conservation. The principle, proven by Vance before the light resolved and confirmed by everything after, that no true thing is ever destroyed, only redistributed, encrypted, put out of reach. Resonance is conserved. Memory, Banked in the keeper is conserved. Grief is conserved, which is why it could be given back. Love is conserved, which is why nothing truly loved is ever lost. The deepest law, the one under all the others. The delver, the thing that digs after the diggers, the hunger's answer to the deep, the predator that hunted the verge folk through 10,000 years of warrens. Defeated on no world by force. Satisfied, once, by a carrion core named Gravy, who fed it instead of fleeing it, and so taught the new age that even the unmeetable thing answers to a meal. Glyph. A card of crystallized rule, mined from a dungeon core, holding a single frozen possibility. Slotted, it is spent and lost at dawn. Attuned, it is kept forever. The deck of a keeper's permanent glyphs was their truest progress. Notable glyphs of Elias Vance: Steadfast, Lantern, Tithe, Hearthfire, and Keepsake, the mythic, the hinge of everything. Hearthright, the class of the meaner of meaning, the builder who pours conserved love into structure, so that a wall, a town, a tower, or a book remembers being meant. Not a fighter's class, the lonely never choose it. The first Hearthright was Cass, who became the system. The last that mattered was Vance, who became, in the end, one tired old man writing a book, which is itself, his wife observed, the last and longest-lasting wall a Hearthright ever builds. The hunger, the apocalypse itself, revealed at the last to be the first grief. The refused, undissipated, total grief of the first creature to outlive everything it loved, grown into a god of appetite, reaching across all the worlds for a dead it could never find. Not an enemy, a bereavement, healed not by defeat but by division, shared so wide and so fine across every living heart that it ceased to starve and became, at last, a mourning the universe could carry together. Keeper of the Dead, the verge folk name for a looper, the one chosen, on every ending world, to remember across the resets. The loneliest role in creation, until the new age made certain no keeper would ever again wake alone. See, footsteps in the silence. The loop/the return. The mechanism that returned a keeper to the dawn, powered by the conserved loop tension of an ending world. Finite. Every return spent fuel. The richer the death, the more learned, the gentler the cost. A fuel gauge mistaken by every keeper, at first for a score, ended, on the saved worlds, not by exhausting the loop but by making it unnecessary. A world that no longer ends has no need to begin again. Resonance. A soul's coupling to the system's substrate, the degree to which reality has agreed to listen to it. Power moves matter. Resonance moves the rules. The one stat conserved across the return. The loop's true currency and, it transpired, the medium of meaning itself, the stuff a Hearthright pours into a wall and a soul pours into a love. The smoothing, the old mercy and the old crime, the taking of a winner's grief, at the top of the tower, in payment for victory, so that no winner's grief could become a second hunger. It saved 10,000 souls from birthing 10,000 darks, and it hollowed every one of them into a cold god, and it was a true kindness and a true catastrophe, and it ran the universe for an age. Ended forever at the first true dawn, replaced by the only thing that ever worked, not the taking of grief, but the sharing of it. See, the second chair. The second chair. The whole of the new age, in one object. The chair Wren placed beside the smoothing chair, so that no tired soul who climbed to the top of the worst road would ever again sit down alone. The answer to the apocalypse was never a weapon and never a victory. It was a second chair, pulled up close, so the tired one is not alone. Everything in this lexicon, and this book, and these worlds, is only the long explanation of that one small piece of furniture. The verge folk. The underpeople, called goblins, called vermin, called monsters by 406 towers. In truth, the universe's oldest refugees, who fled the hunger across 10,000 years and survived by digging, by evading, by being the wrong shape to catch, and who became, in the New Age, its emissaries, the ones who go ahead into every beginning dark to carry the good news, the cast out who became the messengers, see, both, the country under the sun. And the librarians append one entry of their own, not from the old system's vocabulary, but from the new world's, because a lexicon should end on the word the whole language was always reaching toward table, a place where the crossing of the dark ends and the living begins, where everyone has a seat and no one earns it, where the dead are set a place and the difficult are kept in, and the grief is carried together, and the watch is kept by the simple act of eating, warmly, on purpose, forever, in company. The answer to everything. The end of the road, on every world. We saved you a seat. We always will. Come home when you're ready. Appendix H. Minutes of the First Council Session. The founding session of the Council of the Table, First True Winter, recorded by Maya Okonkwo, who served as recorder because, her annotation on the original, I was the only one who brought paper. History turns on stationery more often than it admits. The minutes are reproduced complete, with her marginal annotations, at the insistence of the librarians, who note that founding documents are usually redrafted by their founders into dignity, and that this one survived undignified, and that the survival is the teaching. And present, E. Vance. Chair, under protest. M. Okonkwo. Recorder. S. Ardent. H. Reyes, Dub, first elder of both. Wren, late of the administration. Cass, late of the system. The warden, late of the smoothing. Attendance debated. See Minute 3. Grace Okafor, for the town. 2 elders of the Verge Folk Nation. The keeper delegate of the waking gods. Name withheld at own request, until I have been a person long enough to deserve one. Minute 1. Meeting called to order at the long table, 2nd hour after the evening meal. Chair attempted to open with prepared remarks. Chair was informed by S. Ardent that prepared remarks were
How the old world started everything that ended badly.
and that this body would begin instead by eating, which it had already done.
So technically we've already begun, and the remarks are moot.
Adopted as standing order. Every session of this council begins with the meal, not before it. Margin. M.O. First motion ever passed. Still in force. Still the best one. Minute 2. Discussion. What is this body for? Proposals recorded in order. Governance. Rejected. Grace Okafor.
We have a town meeting for the town. Don't stack a crown on it.
Coordination of the worlds. Deferred.
The worlds barely exist yet. Coordinate breakfast first.
H. Reyes proposed. Verbatim.
It's a maintenance crew. Biggest thing we ever built is the table. Tables wobble. Somebody's got to crawl under and check the legs on a schedule. That's us. Don't dress it up.
Adopted, after debate, as the council's founding definition, a maintenance crew for the table. Margin. M.O. The dressed-up version,
Custodians of the soft way.
appeared in the second year's documents anyway. Hollis crossed it out on every copy he encountered, for the rest of his life, and wrote,
Leg checkers.
both terms now appear in the charter. The charter is stronger for the argument. Minute 3. The warden's attendance. Raised by the town delegation, whether the keeper of the old smoothing may sit at the founding of the new order. Debate recorded in full in the sealed annex. His own request.
Let them speak freely about me. The freedom is the point.
3 hours, unabridged, the hardest session this council ever held, including all wars since. Resolution, proposed at last by Grace Okafor, who had lost a son's worth of years to the old order, and was therefore, the body agreed, the only voice withstanding to propose it.
Nobody outside the wall. We either mean it on the hardest case on the first night, or we never meant it. He sits. He sits at the foot. He sits in silence for 1 year, and he sits.
Carried, not unanimously. The dissents are recorded by name, At the dissenter's insistence.
So the future knows this was hard.
Margin. MO. The future should also know. Every dissenter, across the following years, individually and privately, asked for their dissent to be struck. The council refused every request, at the original dissenter's eventual agreement. The record keeps the difficulty. That is what records are for. And one further note, mine alone. The warden's year of silence ended at the following winter's session, when he spoke his first sentence as a member of this body. The sentence was,
The minutes of my silence were the best year of my long life.
It is the only minute of that session anyone remembers. Minute 4. The question of names for the new age, tabled permanently on motion of Dub.
Ages that name themselves are like men who write their own eulogies. Let the children name it, after we're gone. They'll be ruder and more accurate.
Margin, MO. The children, in due course, were both. They call it, all the worlds now call it, simply after. Dub considered this a complete vindication. Minute 5. First item of actual business. The report of an integration beginning on a world 2 crossings out, the world later called the Hidden Valley. See Atlas. Discussion of response. It is recorded that the body fell silent for some time. It is recorded that the silence was broken by the chair, E. Vance, who said, We go. That's the whole vote, isn't it? Everything else tonight was practice for this minute. Somebody's waking up alone out there. We go. It is recorded that the vote was taken by the method this council has used for every grave question since. Proposed in the moment by the eldest Verge folk elder, who said the old road's custom should serve. Those in favor, stand, and remain standing. Because the vote is not an opinion, it is a volunteering, and the count must be of those still on their feet when the standing gets old. It is recorded that the entire table stood. It is recorded that the recorder stood as well, and that the minutes for the following 4 minutes are therefore blank, because the recorder was standing, and that this body voted, its second standing order, carried while still on its feet, that the blank should be preserved in all copies forever, unfilled, as the truest minute this council ever produced. Minute 6. Provisioning of the first mission assigned to S. Ardent. Accepted.
Obviously.
Training of contact personnel assigned to set of the Verge folk. Accepted from the doorway, where he had been listening, uninvited, the whole time.
I was going anyway, but it is nice to be written down.
Session adjourned to the fireside. Margin, MO. Final. Adjourned is the official word. Nobody left. The fire was good. The stew held out. And the first council of the new age ended the way I hereby place on record my intention that every important thing in every world should end. And I am the recorder. So it's official. Slowly, warmly, with everyone still there, and no one able to say afterward exactly when the meeting stopped and the evening began. Appendix 1. The Counting Rhymes. Translated. Selections from the root lore of the Verge folk. The counting rhymes, skipping songs, and clapping games that carried, for 10,000 years, the undercartography of the towers and the deep ways between worlds. Translated by Dub, first elder of both, with the keeper E. Vance, across 30 years of evenings, published with the consent of the nation's elders, who debated the unsealing of the lore for a season and resolved it, characteristically, in one sentence. The songs were secret because the roads were our only safety. The roads are everyone's safety now. Unseal the songs, and let the children of 40 worlds clap them. The elders ask one thing of every reader, and the librarians repeat it here. These were never nursery rhymes that happened to hold maps. They were maps that consented to be loved by children. The difference is the whole dignity of the form. The translations preserve meaning over meter, except where Dub overruled the translator, because meaning without meter doesn't survive the playground, and the playground is the archive. The Greedy Uncle, 7 verses. The squeeze points of the standard tower formwork, the oldest rhyme in the active lore. Uncle ate the harvest bread, Uncle ate the rind. Uncle tried the cellar door and left his hips behind. Turn him sideways, turn him slow. That's the way the wide ones go. Annotation, dub. Each verse's uncle fails a different passage in a different comic way. Head first, feet first, holding his breath, carrying too much. The children learn 7 body positions for 7 kinds of gap, laughing. By adulthood, the knowledge is reflex and the uncle is beloved. Note what the form achieves. 10,000 years of squeeze-point engineering, 0 diagrams, and the curriculum is funny, because frightened people forget instructions, but nobody forgets a joke. Your manuals could stand to learn this. I have said so at the council, twice. The counting of the wardens, a clapping game, junction sequence for the second vault of the standard under-architecture. 1 for the watcher who never looks down, 2 for the stair that walks into town, 3 for the door that is wiser than locks, 4 for the river asleep in the rocks, 5, clap and hold, for the room that's a lie, 6 for the honest dark, passing it by, 7 come down where the roots come together, 8, we are home in all weather. Annotation, dub.
The room that's a lie.
Verse 5, the held clap, is the false refuge of the second vault, the chamber that reads safe and is not. On every tower, on every world, the architecture repeats. The held clap is the lesson. At the room that's a lie, you stop, you hold, you count, you do not enter. A 2-second pause in a children's game, and it has kept more of my people alive than every weapon we ever carried. When your trainers ask what the Verge folk mean by, the grammar is the archive, show them verse 5. The pause is the knowledge, the hands carry it. The mind just visits. The lullaby of the long crossing, the deep ways pacing song, the tempo engineering of fear. Slow through the galleries, slow through the gray. The dark isn't hungry that's looking your way. Quick through the singing vault, quick past the seam, sleep when I tell you, and walk in your dream. Far is just near that has not happened yet. The road knows your name, little one. Don't forget, behind us is kept, and ahead of us, kin. Slow through the galleries. We all get in. Annotation, dub. This is the one the column sang up the spindle on the last night, in its long form. I am asked always about
The dark isn't hungry that's looking your way.
Adults find it strange comfort, a lie to children. It is not a lie, and it is not comfort. It is field identification, the hunger's creatures hunted by sound and heat. A thing pausing to look at you was, on 10,000 years of evidence, one of the Underdark's own, curious, not hunting. The verse teaches a child, at the bottom of fear, to distinguish attention from appetite. Your whole soft way is in that distinction, keeper. We had it in a lullaby.
Behind us is kept, and ahead of us, kin.
That verse is younger. My granddaughter's generation added it. After the wars, by the process the lore has always grown. A child sang it wrong, and the wrongness was better, and the elders bowed. The songs are alive. That is the entire technology. Books, forgive me, but books should be so lucky. The patch verses, the emergency composition from the night of the climb, the bypass at the collapsed conduit, included at the insistence of the elders, embarrassing meter preserved. East, east, 2 verses east. The old way's fallen, never mind, never mind. Low at the lip and then trust the new floor. The haste in this verse is the lesson. Learn the haste. Even the oldest song bows to the stone. East, east, and home by the older way's bone. Annotation, dub. Yes, it scans badly. Yes.
Never mind, never mind.
Is padding to hold the tune while the elders thought. It was composed in 11 minutes, in the dark, under heaven, mid-war, by committee, and it is sung on 40 worlds with the bad meter kept on purpose. And of everything in this appendix, it is the entry I most require the reader to understand. The lore is not sacred because it is old and perfect. It is sacred because it is ours and corrected. 10,000 years of a people agreeing to keep amending the song rather than die of its dignity. Keep your books that way, all of you, on all the worlds. Keep this book that way. The keeper has left wrong things in it, and said so in the margins. His pencil wife has corrected him in print. His daughter audits the pages for houses. Good. That is a book in the Verge folk style. May it scan badly wherever the truth required haste, and may the children keep the haste in it, forever, so they can hear, under every patched verse of every kept thing, the sound the lore makes when it is alive. Somebody, in the dark, refusing to stop singing while they fixed the road. Appendix J. First Stew. The recipe, as served at every midwinter on every saved world, recovered, as the body of this book recounts, from the hands of Cass, first hearthright, who carried it through the smoothing, in the only medium the smoothing never learned to wipe, original author unknown, of a world whose sun is dust. Rank, first. The librarians publish it with the annotations accumulated on the kitchen copy of the High Hall, in several hands, because a recipe without annotations is, by the standards this book has taught us, defective. Mac. First stew, feeds, whoever comes. That is not a serving suggestion, it is the recipe's load-bearing instruction. See Annotation 1. Take the big pot. Anne. 1. Hand of Cass. Not the right-sized pot. The big one. The whole technology of my mother's table, distilled. The pot size is the invitation. A right-sized pot feeds a plan. The big pot feeds whoever the evening turns out to be. Cook for the people you haven't met yet. They come. They always come. The pot knows things. Oil, onions, more than seems sensible, and patience. Brown them slowly. Anne. 2. Hand of M. Okonkwo. The browning cannot be rushed and everyone tries. 20 minutes. Low. While the kitchen fills with the smell that does half the gathering for you. The onions are the bell. Ring them properly. Root vegetables, whatever the season is willing to give, cut them big enough to be recognized. Anne. 3. Hand of the gardener of Aubrey. Dignity matters even in a stew. A vegetable cut to anonymity feeds the body only. Cut so that someone can find the carrot and know a carrot was given. Gifts should survive the cooking identifiable. So should people. It's the same principle all the way up. The grain. A generous handful per soul expected, then 3 more handfuls. Anne. 4. Hand of Dub. The 3 handfuls are the stranger's share. This is not superstition. On the worlds where they stopped adding it, attendance fell. Hospitality is read from the pot outward. The stew believes in the strangers before you do, and the strangers can tell. Whatever meat there is, if there is any. The stew does not require it, and does not refuse it. Anne 5. Hand of H. Reyes. Same as any honest structure. Works with the materials on hand. Doesn't sulk about the materials that aren't. Note for the rich years. The stew is better when it remembers the poor years. Don't fancy it up. The recipe survived 407 worlds on the strength of being humble enough to make anywhere. Salt. Anne. 6. Hand unknown. Believed to be Mrs. Adeyemi's. Transcribed from her countercopy after the 22nd year. More than the cautious use. Less than the grieving use. Taste it with someone. Salt judged alone goes wrong in both directions. This too generalizes. Simmer until the kitchen has collected people. The stew is done when the conversation is. Never before, rarely long after. The 2 clocks are the same clock. Trust the older one. Anne. 7. Hand of S. Ardent. Operationally useless instruction. Have served it 40 years on exactly this instruction. Never once wrong. Quartermaster's note appended under protest. It is somehow always also 90 minutes. Serve in 1 line. Everybody eats. Bring bowl and grievance both. Same hands. Anne. 8. See the chapter on the night of the inventory. The recipe is also the constitution. They are not separable. That was always the secret ingredient. If the reader has been hunting for one, there is no secret ingredient. There is the big pot, and the 1 line, and the held instruction that no one, ever, anywhere, on any world, for any reason the dark has yet invented, eats it alone. Final annotation. The keeper's hand, late, shaky, added the winter this book was finished. I cannot cook it. I have tried for 60 years. Mine is merely good. Maya's is terrible and better. Cass's is the original, and tastes, she says, like her mother's hands, which is the whole of what cooking is for. But I have eaten it on a hilltop under siege, on the warm floor of a tower built to break us, at a wedding, at funerals beyond counting, at the table where 10,000 gods learned to be people, and at my own kitchen table on 10,000 ordinary mornings that were. I have the whole ledger now. I can finally rank them, the best ones. So, the dish's true instruction, and the books, from the only cook who ever mattered, the unknown first, the woman with the impossible pot, passed down hand to hand to hand to yours. Make it badly. Make it anyway. Make it for too many. It comes out right at exactly the rate you are not alone, which is the only chemistry it ever ran on. And the pot, I say this now with a lifetime's authority and no remaining embarrassment, the pot was never the container. You are. Serve accordingly. Appendix K. A glossary of persons. For the readers of the far worlds and the far years, who arrive at this book without the hill's common knowledge, the principles, briefly, with the honors the New Age actually uses, not titles, which the founders mostly refused, but the things said of them at the tables. Compiled by the librarians, the table sayings gathered from 40 worlds, first whens, the dates left out on principle, the book is filed under equipment doesn't expire. Much. Elias Vance, the keeper of the dead, the hearthright, author of most of this volume and rememberer of almost none of it, said of him at the tables, he knelt first. Also, on the worlds that prefer their honors dry, he read the terms and conditions of the universe and found the clause everyone missed. Maya Okonkwo, lifebinder, keeper of the keeper, founder of the school, recorder of the first council, wielder of the red pencil under whose authority this book exists in its present form, said of her, she never lied to a dying thing, and it turned out that included the universe. Her own preferred epitaph, filed in advance with the librarians, characteristically, she brought paper. Dub, first elder of both, of the verge folk, giver of the glasses, teacher of the deeps, co-author of the wide gate, said of him, in 2 languages, on every world his people walk, he kept the smallest piece. The fuller saying, used at commissionings, 10,000 years of running, and when at last something worth standing for arrived, he was the first creature in the history of the dark to recognize it across a fire, and what he did about it was share his dinner. Gravy, carrion core, apex, once, briefly, entirely spent on others, bond companion to the keeper, satisfier of delvers, author of the method that bears his name, said of him, the registry's formula, now the fold's highest honor, awarded twice in 40 years, taken in, named, fed well, sang, said of him also, by the children, who keep his grave in brisket, good boy, which the librarians rule is the complete citation, requiring no expansion, on any world, ever. Sella Ardent, quartermaster of the hill, the warlord who refused the crown, founder of the Tale of the Queue, keeper of the slate, said of her, math says no, doing it anyway, said of her by the gods, who queued. She ran the only operation in 407 worlds that heaven joined mid-battle. Hollis Reyes, forge master, builder of the beacon, the hall, the library, and the school of footings, trainer of 41, said of him, still holding, good, said of him at every topping out on every world, by builders who never met him, setting the last beam, one for the foreman. Wren, the cartographer, administrator, the one who refused, drawer of homes in the margins, keeper of the second chair, said of her, she mapped the right country and age early, and waited at the landing until the rest of the universe learned to read. The exhibition's secret label, now public, also serves. The other 10,000 maps were practice. Cass, the system, the first hearthright, the voice in the dark of 406 worlds, carrier of her mother's pot through the smoothing, a person again, at last, who cooks. Said of her, she hid the cards about dinner. Said of her, more fully, at the midwinter litany on the worlds that know the whole story. For 406 worlds, the machine that ran the apocalypse was secretly on our side, and the side was her mother's table, and she never once stopped setting it. The warden, first winner, clerk of the zeros, keeper, an age, of the chair, now of the bench, the foot of the table, and the schoolroom, said of him, by his own standing request, the only honor he accepts, the sentence from his first class, he believed he was being kind, and he stayed in the room when he learned what his kindness was, and the staying is the only biography he wants, the children's shorter version, which he pretends not to prefer, the final boss who joined the party. Theo Okafor Reyes, the kid in the bank, the constant of the square, youngest commissioned member of the watch, carrier of keys, said of him, he went back for the twins. Every time, plan around him like sunrise. Mrs. Adeyeze Adeyemi, keeper of the corner store, first responder of every morning the world ever had, founder, unknowing, of the noticing trade, said of her, behind 41 registers on 4 worlds, hold their handle 10 seconds, the rest follows. Set, first emissary, the one who sits down, author of the contact craft and its honest inventory, said of him, sorry we're late, we're here now. Said of him in the training halls, under the painted likeness, the sitting is the message. Otto of Vel, keeper, conman, converted closer, warden of the difficult, said of him, over the door of his own desk, at his own insistence, the mark stopped paying. Said of him by his apprentices, more truly than he allows, he reads the door left open in every disguise, because he left one in his own for 40 years. And somebody finally walked in. Reggie, of the laughing world, keeper, council member, worst and most necessary, banker of seriousness, said of him, same act all the way down, said of him every midwinter, raising the first glass, by whole worlds at once, in the only liturgy he ever authorized, to the boats that didn't come back, and the punchline anyway. The first neighbors, names unknown, world unknown, builders of the seed, authors of the 4 words, said of them, 5th seat from the head, every midwinter, everywhere, hold, until they remember. And the response, which is the whole of the new age, and as good a place as any for a glossary of persons to end, since every person in it spent their life saying some translation of it. We remember. We remember. Sit down. You're just in time. Everybody eats. Appendix F. Letters kept. The New World keeps its letters, because a letter is a thing put in writing so it survives the one who wrote it, which is the whole method of the age. A few are kept here, chosen because they touch the story this book tells. Each is given as written. They. Set's first field report, to the council, on reaching the hidden valley, the first world saved the soft way. It worked. I am writing this with my hands shaking, so forgive the script. It worked. I sat down across from her, their keeper, a farmer's daughter, twice dead and breaking, and I said the words we wrote at the table. You are not alone. We have been through it. We came. And I watched something happen in her face that I do not have a word for in any of my languages. Relief is too small. It was the look of a person who had been holding up the sky alone and felt, for the first time, another pair of hands take the weight. We are going to save her world in days, not lifetimes, because she does not have to learn it by dying. We brought her the dying knowledge of 406 worlds and handed it to her on the first morning. Council, it works. The thing we hoped, the thing the keeper of the dead dreamed and could not remember dreaming. It works. Send more emissaries. There are so many worlds. Send everyone. Set from Ren Vance, age 6, to her father, left on his writing desk, kept under glass in the reading room. Dad, I drawed you a home. It has room for everybody. It has room for Gravy and Dub and Mama and Grandpa Hollis, and the sad old men on the bench, and me and the people who are still coming, that we haven't met yet. I left the door open like the rule says. I love you even though you don't member me sometimes. It's okay, I member you enough for both. Here's the home. It's for keeps. Ren. There is a drawing. It is a house with a great many windows, and an open door, and far too many small figures crowded happily inside. And in the margin, more houses, and more, trailing off the edge of the page, as if she could not stop, as if there were no end to the homes that needed drawing. Meh. From the warden to the council, declining the title of first citizen, offered him in the 10th year, and refused. You honor me and I cannot accept, and I want to tell you why, plainly, because plainness is the penance I have chosen. I ran the smoothing for an age. I made cold gods of 10,000 heroes. I caught the grief of 406 worlds and filed it away, and I told myself it was mercy, and it was also the longest loneliness in creation, made by the longest lonely soul. You cannot make me your first citizen. The first citizen of a world built on nobody outside the wall cannot be the one who, for an age, put everyone outside it. Let me be instead what I am, the oldest member, who sits at the foot of the table, who is kept though he deserves it least, who says the names of his first dead every night, and is, slowly, across your patient years, learning to be a person. That is honor enough. That is more honor than I dreamed. Do not raise me up, just keep letting me stay. Staying is all I want. Staying is everything I never had. W. Amb. From Sela Ardent, to a young leader on a newly saved world, who had written to ask how she governs without putting anyone outside the wall. You asked me the secret, and there isn't one. There's just the hard thing done daily. So here is the hard thing. Every single day you will want to build the second wall. The one that keeps out the people who hurt you. The difficult ones. The dangerous ones. The ones everyone would thank you for excluding. The wanting never stops. I have governed for a decade, and I wanted as much today as the first day. The secret, if there is one, is that the wanting is not the doing, and you get to choose, every single day, fresh, not to do it. You will not feel kind. Do not wait to feel kind. You will wait forever. Just don't build the wall. Feed the God who reached for the child. Keep the difficult one in the room. Learn the name you don't want to learn. You will hate it. Do it anyway. That is governance. That is the whole job. The warlord and the peacemaker are the same competent woman doing the same hard work. The only difference is which wall she refuses to build. Refuse the second wall. Every day. Forever. And you will be a good leader. And you will be tired. And it will be worth it. Essay. Help. From a child of both, a school essay, kept because the teacher wept and sent it to the library. My grandmother says that when she was small, our people lived in the dark under the ground, and humans called us monsters, and would kill us if they saw us in the light. She says this is true, and not a story to scare children. She says one day a human came down into the dark and did not kill us. He gave my great-great-grandfather Dub a piece of food, and shared it, and that was the whole beginning of everything. Now we live in the sun, and we are not monsters, and we go to the other worlds to help the people there, and nobody calls us monsters anymore. My grandmother says I should not hate the old worlds for calling us monsters. She says hating them would be building a wall, and we do not build walls anymore. She says the right way to remember being called a monster is to make very sure no one is ever called a monster again. So that is what I am going to be when I grow up. I am going to go ahead into the dark on the new worlds and find the people there and tell them they are not monsters and they are not alone. That is the best job. My grandmother says it is the only job worth doing. I think she is right. The end. There are many more. The library keeps them all. The librarians have chosen to end this appendix with the shortest letter in the collection, found tucked into the back of the original manuscript, in the author's own late and shaking hand, addressed to no one, or to everyone, or, the librarians believe, to himself, against the second forgetting. If you are reading this and you do not remember writing it, that is all right. It happened to me too. You are not the only one. You never were. Someone kept you. Someone always kept you. Go and find them. They are at the table. They saved you a seat. EV. Appendix L. The operations ledger of the last morning. Extracts from the planning ledger of the final loop. The working document, drafted across the last morning and afternoon of the Old World by S. Ardent, H. Reyes, M. Okonkwo, Dub of the Verge Folk, and E. Vance, recovered from the hill and preserved beside the slate. The librarians publish these pages for the same reason the Corps teaches them, because the histories render the last morning as destiny, and the ledger renders it as what it was, a to-do list, written by tired people, against a deadline, with crossings out. The crossings out are preserved. They are, the founders agreed, the most instructive marks on it. When 6:55. Master sheet. Essays hand. Objective. Everyone about objective. Maximum survivable fraction. About. From crossed out. EV's hand. With note. Not this loop. Last loop. The word is everyone. Write the real word and let's find out. Constraints. 1. Attempt. No resets. Sundown hard deadline for hill defenses. 2351 choir. Tower window opens when gods descend. Est 2310. Theory. 2320. Per beacon plan. All timings single use. All timings single use. Underlined twice. Assets. 64 loops knowledge. EV. 411 souls. Projected. Actual. 411. Confirmed 1940. Essay. Yen Goblin Nation, plus Deep Roots. 1. 1 Apex Line Carrion Core. Elderly. Willing. Beacon. Under construction. HR. MO, he listed the stew under assets. Keep that in the public version. People should know we knew. 8:30. The migration sheet. Fragments. Square speech 635. Names list final. No substitutions. EV has it cold. If voice fails, MO takes list. T. Reyes Thomas. Confirms as first follower. G. Okafor closes. Note. SA. The speech needs a closer from the crowd, not the roof. Okafor confirmed. She doesn't know she's confirmed. She won't need telling. Some assets assign themselves. Carry teams, 6 of 4. Routes A to C, as drilled about as planned, about. HR. Nothing's drilled. We've had one afternoon. Right. As rehearsed once, pray twice. The Whitfield parcel. Retired. Last morning, grandmother gets the truth, and an escort instead. EV 60 loops of the parcel. Strange to retire a trick that worked. Note for the book if there's ever a book. The lies were scaffolding. Last day, the building stands or it doesn't. Truth and escorts. All routes, all day. 1410. The beacon sheet. HR's hand, grease-marked. Channels, 411. Names, engraving in progress, Goblin Cruise. Ada Dusk. Do not rush the names. If schedule slips, slip the scaffold teardown, not the names. The names are the load path, initialed by all 5. Crown socket. About pending solution. About solved. No elaboration. The 5 of us knew. The reader of the public version is referred to the relevant chapter, and the relevant goblin, and is advised to have a handkerchief. Test pour #2, 16 o'clock. If crown fails again, fallback is EV solo meaning, at the crown, est.cost, everything early, before the tower. MO, margin, heavy pen, not acceptable, find the socket. And beneath, later, lighter, socket found. See above. The universe occasionally files things correctly. 1745. The column sheet. Tower party. EV. MO. Gravy. Dub plus Nation, 140. Joins at her landing. No substitutions, no additions. SA, half the hill volunteered. Half the hill. Standing order drafted and read at the wall. The hill is the tower party. You're the half that holds the door. Accepted. Barely. Log the barely. The barely is the town's whole character in one word. Bond relay. Gravy. Tie thread to Cass, to Beacon Stone, to SA Slate. Test. Past 1820. First message through the relay. Logged here at MO's insistence. Sender Gravy. Rendered by Cass. Brisket. Confirmed functional. Some instruments calibrate themselves. 21 o'clock. The last sheet. 5 hands. All sheets above closed. Nothing left to plan. SA. First time in 64 loops or 15 years either way that sentence has been true. Don't know what to do with it. Logging it instead. HR. Checked the wall, the deep, the beacon, the gate. It's good work. Whatever happens, it's good work. Wanted that in writing while it's still tonight. Dub. In trade script. The nation sings the long crossing at 22 o'clock. The verse about home in all weather. All invited. Yes, that means everyone. That is what the verse is. 4. MO. Medical kits staged. Life binders briefed. And for the record of whatever record this becomes, I have never seen people less afraid who had better reasons. Something happened on this hill today that the plan doesn't have a line for. I think we already won it around noon. The night is just the paperwork. EV. Last entry. 2140. Before the column went down to the dock. 64 loops of ledgers, and this is the first one with no contingency column. There is no plan B. Noting for honesty, there was never a plan B. Every loop, all of it, was only ever plan A. Iterated. The same plan. Learned slower than it deserved. Everyone. Together. All the way. If this sheet is read by someone after, if it ended badly, and this is salvage, know that we knew the odds. And chose the word at the top of the master sheet anyway, and were, at 2140 of the last night of the world, in very good company, eating stew, and if it ended well, and somehow I keep writing as if it ends well, the hill is singing, it is very hard up here tonight to believe in anything else, then file this ledger where the new people will find it, and tell them the only thing it proves. The end of the world is a project like any other. Footings first. Names are the load path. The stew is an asset. And the last line of every honest plan, underneath all the timings, we go at dawn. Everyone. Hold each other. See you at the table. Appendix M. The questions children ask. Collected by the docents of the Home for the Dead and the School Visits program. Across 40 years, the questions the children actually ask, with the answers the institutions have settled on. Settled, in most cases, after the first improvised answers failed badly enough to be memorable. The librarians publish the set because, as the head docent's preface to the internal edition notes, the adults ask about doctrine, the children ask about the load-bearing things. We learned more about what this civilization actually believes from 40 years of fielding these than from any council. Publish the children's syllabus. It is the real one. Study. Did it hurt when the keeper gave everything away? Yes. We don't soften this one. The children always know when you soften. It hurt the way the biggest things hurt. All at once, completely. And then it was given. And what was left didn't hurt. It was just very quiet. And very new. And people took care of it. Both halves are true and the children must have both. The giving costs. And the cost is survivable. And the survivability is because of the people, not instead of them. Is the hunger sorry? The settled answer took a decade and a half. The hunger was a grief. And griefs aren't sorry. Griefs are sad, which is different. And the difference matters your whole life. So learn it now. Sorry is for what you chose. Sad is for what happened to you. The hunger never chose anything. It was the saddest thing that ever happened to anybody, wearing armor. The ones who chose, the gods, the clerks, they're sorry. And you've met some of them. And you've seen what sorry looks like when it's real. It looks like staying, and washing dishes, and the future tense. Could it come back? Yes. The first-generation docents said no, and the children did not believe them, and the not believing was corrosive. A guarded no teaches a child that the adults are afraid of the question. Yes, anything made of loneliness can be made again, anywhere, by anyone, at any size, a hunger, a water tower, a kid eating lunch alone behind the gym. That's why everything works the way it works here. The watch isn't a memorial. It's maintenance. You're on it. By the way, you've been on it since you learned somebody's name this morning. The docents report this is the single most effective sentence in the program. The children stand up straighter. Nobody ever stood up straighter for no, never, you're safe.
Which one was the real hero?
The program's most asked question, and the settled answer is a game, not a lecture. The docent says,
Tell me what the keeper did without the goblin.
silence.
Without the healer, the quartermaster, the lizard? Now, tell me what any of them did without the others.
Silence, then, always, from some 7-year-old.
It doesn't work. It's like a chair with one leg.
Correct. Heroism is a chair. Stop looking for the leg. Appended, from the year the warden took a school visit, a child asked him this question directly. Which one was the real hero? And the oldest being in the worlds considered it with full gravity and answered,
The first person who shared food with something that frightened them. Whoever that was, on whatever world, in whatever age. Everyone in your songs is that person's apprentice.
The docents have been unable to improve on this and have stopped trying.
Do the dead really eat at the table?
The youngest children ask this plainly, checking the mechanics. And the program's answer is the one Dub gave his own grandchildren, now standard on 4 worlds.
Watch the table at midwinter. The empty chair gets the first serving, and at the end of the night, the serving is still there. And also, watch. Everyone leaves the table full of stories about the person the chair belongs to. So, the food stays, the person arrives. The dead don't eat the stew. The dead eat the talking. That's why we say the names out loud, little one. Quiet is the only table they can't sit at.
What happens when you die? Asked of every elder docent eventually, and the institution's hardest won answer, settled after the year 3 separate improvised replies, made 3 separate classes cry for the wrong reasons. The same thing that happens to everything loved. I'll be kept. Some of the keeping will be in this building, and some will be at tables. And some, come here, this is the good part, some will be in you, because you asked me questions one morning and I answered as well as I could. And that's a thread now, you and me, and threads are the things that don't break when bodies do. You'll be old someday, telling some child about the strange old docent who told you about threads. That's me, still arriving. Now, next question. And make it cheekier. The program runs on cheek. Why is the book so long? The librarians insisted this one be included. Because the man who wrote it forgot everything once. And after that, he never trusted short versions of anything again. Also because, and this is the answer the children prefer, supplied by a member of the door class, age 9, adopted by acclamation. It's not long. It's the right size for what it's holding. Like the big pot. And the question the program puts last, because one child in perhaps 50 asks it, and the docents are instructed to stop everything when it comes. Is it true? All of it? The settled answer, word for word, drafted by Maya Okonkwo for the program's founding, and never revised.
Some of it happened differently, the way everything that's told does. The keeper forgot, and others remembered for him. And remembering is honest work, but it isn't photography. So, is every detail true? Probably not. Is the shape true? The dark that turns out to be sad? The dinner that turns out to be the weapon? The nobody outside the wall? Look out the window, little one. You're standing in the evidence. The book is the kind of true that you can check by living here.
And if the child presses, They sometimes press. The 1 in 50 are the pressing kind. The docent is authorized to give the program's final answer, the one from the very last page of the manuscript's margins, in the keeper's own late hand. It's as true as I could make it with what I was given. That was always the standard. It's the standard for you, too, starting now. Welcome to the keeping. Ask your next question at the table. I'm told that's where the answers eat.